We haven't started yet. I'm glad you're all excited. It's good to see. We've just got to see that guy at the back when we're on air. So. No, I'm sorry, when he's on recording.
Do you want to check out of the way?
No. Yep, thank you. He's got a big hand. Welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to open our meeting again today. And just a reminder, if you have your mobiles, if you can have them switched off, because it does interfere. And we have one apology for today's meeting, and that is Councillor Cox. So please be seated. Thank you. So, declaration of interest, I have in 9.3. For the record, any other declaration of interest?
Sorry, 20-something.
Thank you. That's all for declaration of interest. Confirmation of the minutes. Somebody have to move the minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of September. Move Councillor Spencer. Seconded Deputy Mayor. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That is all councillors present. That is carried. No deputations, no petitions. We do have a community report. I understand Ms Gillian Miles will be here. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Gillian Miles. I'm the Festival and Event Specialist with Visit Northern Tasmania, and I'm the founding director of the new cool season event Agriculture, which we delivered here in August, from 5th to the 8th of August this year. Thanks for inviting me here today, not only to give you a brief snapshot of the event, but so that I can sincerely thank you all for supporting Agriculture through the grant that you provided for your attendance at events and providing this wonderful town hall as a venue for some important forums under the title of Plate. The sessions here included food security, food policy and sustainable eating, where Deputy Mayor Danny Gibson presided eloquently as moderator. Thank you. These important discussions across 3 venues in Civic Square were called Conversations in the City, and they created the link between this beautiful regional city and the farmers, makers and growers who surround us in the region and across the state. They've been recorded and they'll be curated as Agriculture, the podcast, with 20 sessions being released between now and the next event, which will keep awareness high of the value of this festival and reinforce the message that Launceston and the North sit at the epicentre of agriculture in Tasmania. The program we designed consisted of a mix of events and activities that represented the whole food system. A welcome starter culture at Bread and Butter, a community day at the Northern Suburbs Community Centre with 50 community members building worm towers. The symposium day that I mentioned, Conversations in the City, the Launceston Night Market featuring Dave Manganagoff's Indigenous dance troupe performance, the acoustic life of farm sheds and landscapes of learning on 3 farms, with music and panels featuring celebrity guest speakers on climate, fire and soil, and a Feeding Our Future food policy Sunday brunch. The Tasmanian produce dinners were held at Grain and at Tamba, and gourmet farmer Matthew Evans launched his new book, Soil, at Stillwater. We partnered with Scott Rankin's Big Art from the Northwest Coast and worked together to find the 3 ideal locations for the day, on farms, in barns, sheds and on verandas, to present the acoustic life of farm sheds and landscapes of learning at Brickenden, Vaucluse and Howland Rise. And next year another 3 farms will be featured to ensure everyone has an interface with the land and the farmers who grow our internationally renowned fresh produce, dairy and meats. In total, there were over 60 speakers involved, over 20 artists involved in creating music, performance and moving images at the 3 farm sites, plus over 20 crew producing and managing the shows. 90% were Tasmanian, and over 15 Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people were involved in performances. Nearly 300 people experienced the beauty of Northern Tasmania on that Saturday. Over 700 tickets were sold across the whole event, and over 1,500 people participated in free events. Everything sold out. There was a truly wonderful buzz in the air if you were part of it. And given this was a success in the middle of winter during a global pandemic, we feel it augurs well for when our borders open and when we can invite visitors back to the island. The event is designed as an event of national significance. It's a next generation event and will become the success that AgFest and Festivalia are today, but in a new way. We're looking well into the future, and we look forward to building on our partnership with Council as we grow. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Congratulations to you, the committee.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So we go on to public question time. We've got the ones from the previous meeting there that have taken notice. Any public questions without notice today? Michael.
Mr Mayor, Robin Smith on behalf of Coffee Republic. City Heart Stage 2 development, I take it that the Deshano Way bus interchange project falls within that. I was just wondering if you could tell me what documents were used to come to that decision to relocate the bus stop there. Documents, if they're the GHD, I think there were 3 proposals, and if there's any other consideration or scenarios that were considered coming to that proposal, please.
Yeah, there was quite a few. We'll take that on notice, I think, so we can give you the list of all of them so we don't miss anything out.
What I've observed thus far is the proposal to site the bus stops from St John Street to Deshano Way appears to lock in to the street changes requiring Patterson Street to become two-way to enable the buses to egress from that site. By changing that section of Patterson Street to two-way, it does create a very complicated street pattern, which is something that the City Heart Stage 2 was supposed to eliminate, because the next block of Patterson Street becomes one-way, but then it turns onto George Street, then as two-way, but then the next block becomes one-way, then York Street remains two-way, Charles Street changes to two-way, but the next block becomes one-way. Doesn't that sound quite the most complicated?
Yeah, I don't think that's all correct, but we'll take on notice and give you the information.
If it doesn't, thank you, please do. And the third question, antisocial behaviour is given as a reason for relocating the bus stops from St John Street. What consideration has been given to the lack of observation for that Deshano Way bus stop? The reports that I've read talk about the observable nature of a bus stop on the street versus ineffectively a closed horseshoe structure as far as antisocial behaviour goes.
Yeah, well, that area will be well lit. It will be obviously open, and it'll be. We believe it'll be safe. Do you want to go further? Anything else to add to that?
I'll look again. It would be better to answer it on notice.
I can take it on notice then. Yep.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions without notice? No? Thank you. So under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals... Sorry? Yeah?
I believe that there are a number of councillors who have expressed a clear position on the site that is going to be discussed under 9.1 today in the planning scheme, and this has created a difficulty in that is clear and perceived bias, which would mean that they cannot be involved in the decision today. That would include yourself, Mayor, who has said things variously at the last meeting where this was discussed, that you agree with everything that was said around the table, and that this will be a 5-star hotel. So clear statements are being made about a potential plan that is not part of...
Yeah, thank you. Look, that was obviously discussed during the DA, and that's something that each councillor will take a notice of, and we'll let it through. Thank you.
Well, my point is that I don't believe that we can discuss this item today because there won't be enough councillors around the table to make a decision that's not just perceived as biased, but is actually biased.
Yeah, well, that's your opinion. Thank you. The CEO will comment.
Just in response to that, Mayor, it's for each councillor to make their own decision in respect of their ability to be able to make a decision in a completely open and unbiased manner. Obviously, you've got a view that you've expressed that you can't compel other councillors to adopt your view. So really that we're entitled and that we're entitled to continue to have a lawful discussion and then determination of the matter today.
Thank you.
And
We'll
that's
move on.
completely understandable, and I'm sure that's, what I expect you to say. But the trouble is that this decision, if that's true, won't be binding because of the nature.
Well, that'll take its course. So thank you very much. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
So under the provisions of the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993, Council acts as a planning authority in regard to items included in Agenda Item 9, Planning Authority. Somebody happy to... Oh, we've got some speakers, sorry. We do have speakers for that. So we can have the speakers. Just a reminder of the rules that are there for those. Hi, welcome.
Victoria
State your
West
name and
Hamer.
address, thank you.
Okay, Victoria Wilkinson, West Hamer. Thanks for today, and I've got 4.5 points I'd like to raise. Number one is when this publicity was announced for the amendment, there were extensive pictures of the hotel DA, the one that was lost on appeal. Now, I would question why it wasn't submitted as a combined DA. The Planning Commission allows for that. And I suggest that the answer is that the amendment will allow for a much greater development, the original hotel design that was touted with the publicity. And I think it's a bit misleading. Number two, there appears to cover an area larger than the object of the amendment, the Gorge Hotel, and I'll quote this from the amendment, as well as commencing the transitional arrangements to the Margaret Street corridor. That's not in the area. And the establishment of a larger permitted building envelope will allow greater clarity and assurance to future applications wanting to invest. Now, I suggest this is master planning by default or by stealth. It's not been adequately presented to the public, and I really find that amendment part of the amendment which relates to the wider area problem. Number three, I would like to address the apparent censorship of my representation, and I think you might have that on your desk. And I would like you to consider it. I see no reason why mine was censored. You'll see at the bottom, that's the bit that was censored. It makes no sense. I do not understand. I've raised it with Ian Moore. He acknowledged the receipt of it, and then I haven't heard from him. That makes no sense. That is not, it should not be there. It should not be removed. It's redacted. Now, I've gone through the representations and the responses, and I believe there are points in those representations that are not adequately addressed by the planning report, and I don't think this is good enough for such a significant, large change to the streetscape of Launceston. And lastly, I did 2 representations, one on the 22nd of June and one on the 5th of July, and only the second one on the 5th of July is in the collection of representations. Okay.
Thank you. Your time is up. Yes?
Well, thank you, Mayor. I've been reliably informed that our audio is not being streamed live at the moment, that people can only hear the audio person talking.
Oh.
They can't hear the meeting.
Thanks for that. Appreciate that. Well, we're working on it. Do I? Well, how long's it going to take?
Sorry, I'm quite happy to say it all again.
No, you're right. Thank you. We'll pause for a couple of minutes and just...
In fact, I would like to say it again. There are 61 representations to this amendment, and chances are quite a few of these. Not just yet.
Oh, we've got it's not a legal requirement for us to have this, so we can move on. We'll just give them a few minutes to see how they... Because people can come back. But I thought I'd give the opportunity so we can... Thank you. So it is being recorded. Unfortunately, for some reason, the technology is not working for us at the moment, but it's not a legal requirement for us to actually have it online, but we'll continue with the meeting. So we move on to our next speaker, Jim Collier. Again, just state your name and address, please.
Thank you. My name is Jim Collier, and my address is 39 Beach Road, Lugana. May I continue?
Yeah, look, we'll allow it, even though you're out of our area. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good afternoon to you all. It stinks. We're here today purely because Launceston City Council and the developers would not accept a decision of the Resource Planning Management Appeal Tribunal. That's the only reason we're here for this amendment, which is obviously to facilitate another development application for a gorge hotel or something very similar to it. I know you should have read it, or you would have read it. There were over 60 representations about this planning amendment, and the vast majority of those were opposing it. And if I could just take you back through the Resource Planning Management Appeal Tribunal decision, and I'm reading directly from that decision, item 63 said, "The bulk and form of the proposed tower element is out of character with the bulk and form of existing buildings so markedly that even with the diverse streetscape and the eclectic character of the surrounding area, it is not in harmony or broad correspondence with either. Consequently, the proposal fails the performance criteria, P1 brackets C. That's not going to change for whatever is built on that site." Item 69. For these reasons, the apparent height of the proposal, when viewed from roads and public places within the surrounding area, is so manifest that it is not in harmony or broad correspondence with either the streetscape or character of the area. The proposed development, therefore, does not meet the criterion in P1 brackets D. That is not going to change with whatever building is located in that site. And the conclusion, item 79, in respect to grounds 2, was, for the reasons set out above, in respect to the failure of the proposed development to satisfy the criteria in P3, brackets B, brackets C and D, the building height is not compatible with the streetscape and character of the surrounding area. The second ground of appeal is made out. So I'm suggesting to you that in any future appeal against any high-rise building which is proposed for that site will meet the same conclusion, because it is inevitable that if you pass this legislation today, you're going to force people, or somebody like Susan Kai, who was the original appellant against the original proposal, to go through it all again. You're putting enormous stress, mental stress and strain on this lady, who is just an ordinary mum, who objects, quite understandably, to having a high-rise building, with many, many people, citizens and the community in Launceston, who would also object.
Thank you. Your time is up.
Thank you for your time.
Susie Kai.
Do I still need to give my name?
Yes, and your address.
Susan Kai, 22 to 24 Margaret Street, Launceston. Yeah. Mayor, councillors, thank you again for the opportunity to address you. At the council meeting which initiated this amendment, the debate revealed that a number of councillors seemed to misunderstand exactly what they were approving and what their statutory role is when sitting as a planning authority. I hope that councillors have taken the time before this meeting to read the reports thoroughly and to understand the criteria spelt out in LUPA that applies to this decision. Although the planning officers have recommended supporting the amendment, I urge Council not to blindly follow this recommendation. Council's planning staff are competent and professional, but they are not infallible. There are plenty of people with planning expertise who disagrees with the recommendation. Unfortunately, these are complex matters and it is impossible for me to put a detailed case against the planning officer's argument in only 2 minutes. However, in the hope that councillors will apply some critical thinking to this decision, I urge you to consider the following. In responding to representations, planning officers have still not established a strategic planning purpose to justify the proposed SAP. They have failed to justify why consideration of streetscape and character should be abandoned in the assessment of larger, bulkier developments. The planning officers put forward encouraging social interaction as a social benefit of the proposed SAP, without explaining why the larger building envelope is required to achieve this benefit. And the main justification for the SAP, the economic benefit, is still based on an unjustifiable broad interpretation of the term in the land use strategy and LUPA. The proposed SAP remains critically non-compliant with the requirements of LUPA. Regardless of Council's decision today, it is unfortunate that ratepayers' and taxpayers' money will be wasted in the Planning Commission trying to defend such a poorly drafted proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chloe Lynn.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors. Chloe Lyon, professional address 178 Charles Street. I'm here again on behalf of the proponents of this amendment, and I'll be very brief, just a couple of points. I know that a 60-odd representation sounds like a lot, but I think in the scheme of the broader Launceston population, it's actually a drop in the ocean, and upon reading them, there was nothing in there that really jumped out at me as requiring a substantial modification to the amendment or a reason to withdraw Council's support for the amendment. From a technical planning perspective, I agree with the proposed drafting changes to the SAP that have been put forward by the planning officer and have no issue with those changes. I think what's important, there's been a lot made in the representations and again people standing up here today about the previous tribunal decision. It's important to note that the current wording of the zone provision means that change in that area is difficult to enact. Well, what we are proposing is a positive step towards facilitating the change to an existing area where the urban design standard is low and not one which we would consider to be aspirational. This amendment seeks to provide the developers with a way forward that takes away the heat out of that argument of how to interpret that particular performance criteria. And if we go back to the tribunal decision, it is actually very clear that in terms of the impacts to the neighbouring property, that there won't be any amenity impacts to the immediately adjoining property. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Joe Cromie.
My name is Joe Cromie, living in the Charles Hotel here. And almost 12 months back you approved thinking that the hotel would go for Launceston people and and then 2 3 months back again, you think it will be okay. I have to sign the hope so will be working for that will be good for Launceston people, good for council, and good for us. Thank you, and please repeat that.
No, I think everyone heard that. Were you okay? They all understood it, Joe.
Okay.
Yeah, it was very good.
Okay.
So Dean Cocker, are you speaking?
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, councillors. Dean Cocker, 9 Spencer Street. I speak in support of the proposal. We